I am Viv. I'm the head of product at OLIO. We're the world's only neighbor-to-neighbor food sharing app. And I'm going to take you on our story, how we started as a weird WhatsApp group, and we're now a community of actually now almost 6 million users. So my story started here. This blue building is a patisserie in Toronto, and I worked there as a teenager. So at that time, it was the best patisserie in Toronto. People drove for hours, and I'm not even kidding, to line up to get cakes. The first day on the job, we closed at 6. They locked the door, and my coworkers took garbage bags and threw all the cakes in the bin. And I couldn't get over it. 1 minute, it went from a $30 cake to garbage. So from every day after that, I refused to throw anything out. So I'd always package up all the extra cakes and patisseries, take them home, and then distribute them to my neighbors. They were not happy when I quit the job. So this is our co-founder, Tessa, and she has a similar story. She was moving back from Switzerland to London, so she packaged up all her non-perishable foods and gave it to the movers. And they wouldn't take it. They were like, we're not allowed to take all your stuff. So she said, okay, fine. I'm not going to throw it out, but I still want to give it away. So she took to the streets and tried to find somebody to give this food to, and she couldn't do it. So she felt really defeated, came home, and as the story goes, she burst into tears. She was also pregnant at the time. But what she did is she snuck all the non-perishables in the boxes and took them home. And Tessa grew up on a farm, and she said her parents were a fan of child labor because ever since she could walk, she had to work on that farm. And she said it's not just throwing away the food, but what goes into making that food. It's the resources, the time, the energy, and money. So when she had all this surplus food, she thought, there is somebody around me that would love this food. I just have no idea to get in contact with them. Like, what do I do? And so she thought, there must be an app because there is an app for everything. So she Googled an app to share this food, and there wasn't an app. Now you can see where I'm going with this. So the first thing she did when she got home is research food waste. And what she found out was truly horrifying. 1/3 of all food produced in the world gets thrown away. And that's worth $1 trillion annually. And again, as I said before, it's not just the food that's wasted. It's other things like distribution, energy, water, and marketing. So we have all this food waste, but we also have hunger. There are 800 million people in the world who go to bed hungry every night. That's 1 in 9 of us. And the shocking stat is, all these people could be fed on 1/4 of the food that we waste in the Western world alone. So unlike what I just showed you in the previous photo, hunger is not only an issue in developing countries, it's a really big issue in developed countries too. So in the UK, there are 8 million people who experience food poverty. So that's the size of London. So imagine walking around London and everybody you see doesn't have a reliable food source. And half of those people experience severe food insecurity, and that means they don't know where their next meal is coming from. So, and also out of these 8 million people, only 1 million of them have access to food banks. So on top of all of this, food waste is one of the greatest environmental tragedies of our time. Every year, an area the size of China is used to grow food that is thrown away. And if food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd largest contributor to climate change in the world after the USA and China. So we're in a pretty grim situation right now, and it's only going to get worse. So by 2050, we're expected to have 2 billion more people on this planet. And in order to feed all of them, we'll need to increase our food supply by 50%. And we don't know how we're going to do that. So we're on the cusp of pivoting from a world where we have too much food to a world where there is not enough. So I've shared some pretty shocking stats with you, but I think this is probably the most shocking stat of all. Half of all the food waste in Western countries, it happens in the home. So it's like all of us, it's people like me, people like you, we contribute to half of that food waste. And we also throw out a quarter of everything we buy. So that's like coming out of Sainsbury's with 4 bags and just chucking 1 in the bin. And the total, all of that food waste that we waste is worth 15 billion pounds a year. And so a lot of people say like, oh, I don't waste that much food. But if you put it into perspective, so let's just say today I throw out a banana, and then every other household in the UK throws out a banana, that's 30 million bananas wasted. But at OLIO, we like to be positive, despite everything I've just been showing you. We like to say that we are half the problem, but we are also half the solution. So one great example of how we all can tackle food waste in the home is if you share it instead of bin it. And so that's where OLIO comes in. We are an app that connects neighbors with each other to share surplus food instead of throwing it away. I like to say we're similar to like a gum tree, but for food when everything is free. So let's say, at the shop you can get like peppers in plastic, which is ridiculous, but you buy 3 peppers. Let's just say I only needed 1 for a recipe, so I have 2 peppers that I'm not going to use. I take a photo, I write a description, upload it on the app, and anyone near me will get an alert and can message me if they'd like to pick up those peppers. So this is our journey so far. So before we even built the app, we had to validate the idea. So what we did, we went to a food market in London and said, if you don't like food waste, sign up and we're going to put you on a WhatsApp group. And you can start sharing food that you're not going to eat. So 10 people signed up. We stuck them on a WhatsApp group and we sat back and people started sharing food, which was kind of amazing. So we thought, okay, we just need an app that's a little bit better than WhatsApp. So that's what we did. Our first app was really terrible. I'm sorry to all you designers. So that's where we started. We piloted in North London in 2015. 6 months later, we expanded to London, and now we are available globally. And you'll see here, there are lots of peaks and troughs, and some people say, what is that? There are a few things. It's press. At the beginning, we got a lot of press. I think that first peak is BBC. And then also that steep growth curve. You probably guess what that is? That was lockdown. So when lockdown happened, we had no idea what was going to happen with our users if people were too scared to use it. And we just sat back, and it was unbelievable, the growth that we saw. And after that, you can probably see the peak and troughs, and that usually correlates to if it's lockdown. If we're released to lockdown, it drops a bit the growth. Lockdown again, it escalates. And this is quite unbelievable because I started at the very, very beginning, and to get to this is quite something. Although coming this far was not easy at all. As you can imagine, 5-6 years ago, people thought the app was a little bit weird. And we still face challenges today. One of the biggest challenges we face is something called the intention gap. It's where people intend to do something, but they do not. So usually if I go to a talk, I say, lift your hand up if you think OLIO is a good idea. Everyone puts their hand up. Then I say, keep your hand up if you have OLIO. Most people keep their hand up. And then I say, keep your hand up if you've added anything to OLIO, and people's hands drop. Now, why is that? So we've worked with behavioral psychologists from Harvard and MIT. We've worked with data scientists. We've worked with consultancies like McKinsey and Accenture, trying to bridge this gap. And it's funny because food sharing is something we've done since the beginning of time. We would not be here today if humans didn't share food. But we know today is a little bit different, and it is really convenient to throw something else. And let's be honest, it can be a little bit weird to share food on an app with strangers. So we tackled it head on. So this is a tube campaign that we had in London, and it says, when did sharing food become weirder than wasting it? We also had ads on buses, like this one. And it says, there's no better feeling than sharing your unloved aubergine with a grateful neighbor. So someone spotted it, some Redditor, and posted this on Reddit with a comment saying they definitely knew. And it is true. We knew exactly what we were doing with that ad. So I work in product, and a lot of people say, what's your silver bullet? Now, silver bullet is like one thing that you will do that will revolutionize your product, that will make it an overnight success. So Airbnb. Airbnb has this silver bullet myth. So what they did early on is they quote unquote hacked Craigslist. So anybody who posted on Craigslist a room for rent or a flat, they would email them and say, also listed on Airbnb. They then automated this process. Now, if you go online and you look up silver bullet Airbnb, you will see this. They said that revolutionized Airbnb overnight. However, when you look closer to any hockey stick graph like this, there is no overnight success. There's no silver bullet. So Airbnb did a lot of other things, not just hacking Craigslist. They did things like improve photos and listings. They did ID verification. They did instant book. And it was constant iteration and new features that led to their growth. So at OLIO, we like to say we have lots of lots of lead bullets, not a silver bullet. So if you increase something by 2% every month, that's a 30% increase a year. I mean, don't get me wrong, we really wish we had silver bullets. Like, for example, at the very beginning, we wanted to make money and we asked our users, would you donate to us? And they said, yeah, hell yeah. And we said, fantastic. So we created this donation feature in the app and we said, that's it. We've done it, guys. And then we launched it and no one donated. So that was fun. We also created a non-food section because sharing non-food is normal behavior. If you think like Gumtree and eBay, and we thought, if people start sharing non-food on OLIO, they'll start sharing food. And we thought, genius. We launched it. It did well, but it wasn't a silver bullet. It's constant hard work and iteration. So over the past few years, though, we have doubled the number of people who've downloaded the app and added that. And we call it our North Star metric. It's activation. We need more people to add listings. And it's really important for me in product to speak with our users. It's really funny, I work for OLIO, but I don't have a clear view of the app. I know it so well, I see it very differently from our normal users. So a few years ago, when we were trying to increase conversion to get people to add, I said, why aren't you adding? And so many people said, it's because there's nobody near me. And I was like, that's a lie. I know the stats. And 80% of users have 100 people within 2 kilometers of them. There are people everywhere. So I said, but they don't know that. We haven't told them that. So we created this first screen. In onboarding, we let people know how many other OLIOs there are near them. So then we did that. Not a huge difference. And I went and spoke with users again. And they said, I haven't added because there is no one near me. And I'm like, not only is that another lie, we've now showed you that, and you're still lying. So what they really meant is they didn't see a lot of listings near them. So something that's really great about OLIO, but it also is trouble for me in product, is 80% of everything listed on OLIO is requested within 30 minutes. So in London, if I post those 2 peppers, they'll be gone in 5 minutes, no doubt. But this means it's hard to have liquidity on the app because things are flying on and off very quickly. We're not like a shop that if someone buys something, we have stock. So what we did is, you can see in yellow, we now show users what was picked up in the last 24 hours. Sometimes it might feel a bit annoying, but you can easily filter it off. And that increased conversion 15%, and people stopped saying, there is no one near me. Thank God. But what we were doing is working. In total, our users have shared over 10 million portions of food, and that's the equivalent of taking 30 million car miles off the road. And this is where the magic happens, on the doorstep. It is a bit ridiculous. When you actually give food to somebody on your doorstep, it feels great, and it's such a simple thing. So we use mobile technology to connect people. And because we live in a digital age, people are more connected than they ever have been. But it's also weird because they're lonelier than they've ever been. So there are 10 million people in the UK who say that they're often or always lonely. So not only is OLIO tackling food waste, we're connecting people at the same time. But we couldn't do it without our 50,000 volunteers. So these are people that help spread OLIO in their neighborhood. So a lot of these big companies, they run top down. We run bottom up. You want more people near you? Come on, get involved, grow it. So a lot of people say, why did you come up with this volunteer program? What was the motivation behind it? But we didn't. Our users emailed us at the beginning. They said, we want to grow OLIO. What do we do? And we said, we should probably take advantage of these users. We're a small company. If they want to help us grow, let's do it. So now if someone emails us, we'll send them out a pack with posters and flyers and instructions on how to grow OLIO. And we have another type of volunteers called our food waste heroes. We have 20,000 of them. They pick up unsold food from shops, similar to what I did when I worked at the patisserie, and they take it home and they redistribute it on the app. And I'm going to show you a 1-minute video of some of our food waste heroes who pick up from Tesco.
My name is John, and I'm a food waste hero. A food waste hero collects surplus food from Tesco and shares it with the community. Not wasting food is something I've been passionate about since I was a kid. Thank you. See you next week. Cheers. So I ride up to Tesco, I collect whatever food they have left over, and I bring it back and I list it on the app. You get all kinds of people using the OLIO app from all walks of life.
The food is really great quality, it's local to you, it's really easy to pick up, and I think it's good for the environment.
We have a community here, so I get as much as I can and then I distribute it to the people who need it.
I hate good food going to waste, so this is my chance to do something about it.
So now let's talk money. So we often joke we're not a nonprofit, we're just a no-profit. But we are a for-profit business. And this makes some people uncomfortable because they're like, but you do good. Why are you trying to make money? And then I always say, like, you'll buy oil from BP or support like Nestle, which is arguably one of the worst companies, and it's okay for them to make money and for us not to. And it really gets people thinking. And we want to grow and we want to go fast, and it's important for us to want to make money so we can get more investment to do so. So this was in TechCrunch a few months ago. We raised $43 million. That was our Series B. And this is unbelievable. Like, I started when we had 800,000 pounds in the bank, and we only had a 6-month runway. So we're technically a dead company in 6 months when I started it. And we were really, really fortunate to have like-minded investors. They're people who believe in what we do. We say you are not going to get a 3 times return in 2 years like Uber or Deliveroo, but they believe we are doing something more impactful. So how do we make money? So from the beginning until now, we're still focused on user growth. And a lot of people say if you know how to grow users, you will be able to figure out how to monetize them. From 2019, we've made money from those businesses. So for example, Tesco will pay us for our volunteers to collect their surplus food, and we make them a zero food waste business. In lockdown, we released a freemium model, and this is the model you all probably know of. It's like what Calm app does, Spotify. It's you pay us a monthly or annual fee, and you can unlock certain features. And this year, we're going to make money by in-app payments, so people can put things on the app for a fee, and we will take a small commission when it is transacted. So I'm going to loop back quickly to this TechCrunch article. So this is Mike Butcher. He's the editor-at-large at TechCrunch. He's known to be a tough guy. And he interviewed Tessa, the co-founder, for that Series B article. A few weeks after that interview, he sent an email out to all his contacts, and he said he will no longer be focusing his editorial efforts on anything tech. He will only write about things that relate to the climate crisis and social impact, and rumor has it stemmed from that conversation. But the story doesn't stop here. OLIO is more than stopping food waste. It's about stopping waste in general and living a more sustainable lifestyle. So I don't know if anyone has heard of Earth Overshoot Day. So it's the day in the year in which humanity uses up all the resources that the Earth can replenish. So when it was first calculated, Earth Overshoot Day was December 31st. So that meant on December 31st, the Earth had replenished everything that humanity had used throughout that year. So we were at equilibrium. This year, it's July 29th. So anything that we use after July 29th is net depletive to the planet. So another way to look at this is how many worlds would we need to live if we were an average American or Brit? And that's 5 and 3 respectively. So if everybody on the planet today was British, we are currently living as if we have 3 planets. As a world as a whole, we're living as if we have 1.7 planets. By 2030, that's expected to be 3, and by 2050, That's expected to be 5. Clearly, this isn't sustainable. So as a result, OLIO is growing. As I said, we want to be more than just food waste. So we created 3 new sections: borrow, made, and wanted. So borrow, it's a bit obvious. You can borrow and lend things with your neighbor. The average drill is used for 13 minutes. So if you want a drill or need a drill, why not borrow one instead of buying it and then letting it collect dust for the rest of its life? We have another section called Made, and this really sprung up from COVID when the craft culture was growing. And we saw so many people posting things on the app for free of things that they had made. So we created a Made section where you can buy and sell locally made goods. Within the first 3 weeks of launching, we had 15,000 homemade listings on the app. And the last section is a wanted section. Again, quite obvious. If you want something that you don't see on the app, you can request it. And this is quite interesting because there's also this insecurity that comes with OLIO. So I have a drawer full of cables. I'm sure a lot of you also have a drawer full of cables. And there's something about an insecurity. Like I could put it on the app, but it's just a cable. Like if someone doesn't want it, I'll feel really crap. So maybe not, I'll just keep it in the drawer. But then it's very different. Like the other week, someone said, do you have an iPhone cable you don't need anymore? And I was like, I have a drawer full of them. And you feel really great to help somebody else out. And so one last interesting fact about this is the average American home has 300,000 items in it, and Brits are not far behind. So we want to decrease that number instead of grow that number. So when we look to the future, what is next? We have a very bold vision. I'm sure we did 7 years ago when we started a food sharing app, which a lot of people are like, that's bonkers. But we've done it. But the future, we hope to have 1 billion users in the next 10 years. We want to reinvent consumption. We want to change it from a linear model where people buy stuff and then throw it out to a circular model where things are reused over and over again and shared within a community. So while this might seem like a massive vision, we are always inspired by the words of Gandhi, who says, be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you.
That was fascinating. Some incredible statistics there, isn't it? It's almost, those numbers are almost too much to take in, aren't they?
I know, but that's the thing, it's hard to quantify when stuff
It's so hard to quantify, yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've just downloaded it, actually.
Oh.
Do you know what the use is, just out of interest, what the use is in Scotland? Do you know if there's much uptake in Scotland?
There is a lot of uptake in Scotland. Scotland is one of the most progressive areas in the UK. I don't have the exact numbers, but when we started, we went to Edinburgh and Glasgow.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. And so when you started, so when would that have been timescale-wise for starting in Scotland?
Probably 2016 to get things going when we were really small. We went to some like-minded cities in the UK, like Bristol, Brighton, and Scotland.
Okay.
Was one of top on the list.
Yeah. I mean, 6 years ago, did you have any idea how massive this would be?
We knew it was massive, but getting other people to realize it's massive is very, very difficult. No one really knew about it. So we tried to speak to people about it, but no one else spoke about it. We were a small new app. You need people like the BBC to speak about it. You need people with power to do that. And the biggest, what I think, turning point was David Attenborough. He did one of his TV shows, and then he spoke about plastic and spoke about how that is killing the world. That changed everything in terms of climate change.
It was massive, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
and that's when everybody started looking and said, like, oh, you work for Food Sharing App. That is really cool. And that was a huge cultural shift, yes.
And I think the younger generation, my 12-year-old twins are probably a lot more knowledgeable in some areas about climate change and waste than I think even I am, than I am. And I read things all the time, but I think that's hit that generation, hasn't it? So if you think about that, the growth is going to be huge, isn't it, for you?
It is huge as well, and that's where we're also expanding as well, because they also say the people who love OLIO the most are the ones with no waste.
Yes.
And that kills our business model. And that's where we're expanding. But yeah, they are way more ahead of the game than we are, for sure.
It's interesting. Were you involved in COP26 at all? Were you around?
We were.
What did you make of that, out of interest? So COP26 obviously was in Glasgow. It was in November, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right outside the BBC. So it took us about 3 hours to actually get into work through security and everything. But it was fascinating. So there was obviously this huge focus on Glasgow, Scotland, COP26, what was said. But it's interesting because we're going to start doing follow-ups now as to whether anything has actually happened. What was your thoughts on it?
So my colleague went to speak at COP26. We are involved. We are not hitting the targets. That's one thing. And yes, we're going to do follow-up. So they could have put more pressure on because we seem to be missing the targets, and we can't miss targets because there is no leeway. But it's great they're doing something about it, and it's great we're bringing limelight, so it is a catch-22, but we need to do things faster.
It was interesting because obviously, you know, a lot of people are talking about the cost of living just now. So you have, it's almost a perfect storm, isn't it? You've got energy bills going up, you've got the price of food basics going up, national insurance, all the rest of it. I mean, this will have an impact. Or do you think it'll have an impact the way people start to look at their lives differently, look at the waste? What impact do you think that's going to have?
I think it will have a big impact, and that's what we saw with lockdown. That's when you couldn't go to the grocery stores, stuff wasn't available, and people thought, what can I reuse? What is around me, instead of just throwing it and buying it? So yes, most definitely. And we see a lot of people on the app as well who are talking about it. We have a forum who talk about money spent, how you can save it. And the thing is, with our food waste heroes as well, they are able to keep 10% of everything they pick up. So yes, they volunteer from us, but we do give them food. And so actually, getting some of those slots are gold because it means a lot to people, and they love helping the community, but having that 10% of food they pick up is really impactful.
And do you think that's important? Because people like to feel good, don't they, about what they're doing? Is that quite an important thing of why it's working, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said before, it does seem silly, but if you give away like even a jam of jar, you feel fantastic about it. And we're missing that within community. I think you got a lot of that like adrenaline hit from your neighbours previously when we lived in small communities, but now we don't have that.
It's interesting. I was, as you were speaking actually, I was Googling your media coverage. You've had a lot of media coverage. The latest one was just yesterday. Did you see that?
I didn't. What were we in yesterday? We are very lucky to get a lot of media coverage.
Good, so this was in Ireland's free sharing app helping Cork people cut down on food waste by giving away unwanted items. An app developed to help people give away unwanted food has been growing steadily in Ireland since its rollout and is attracting users who just can't stand to see food and other items wasted, including plenty of people in Cork.
We have. I wonder if that's I wonder if that's related to Tesco, because we have started doing our Tesco pickups in Ireland too, so we're getting a lot of buzz as well.
And was that, or how challenging was that to get supermarkets involved, to get the big businesses involved?
It takes years.
Does it?
It seems like it's an overnight success because then everyone hears about it, like, oh, you just got Tesco.
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
This has been 4 years in the work. You know, it's all of a sudden people are like, I heard about you a number of years ago. It takes a lot of time as well, and we work with a lot of volunteers. And one of our issues is that we are not a nonprofit.
Do you think
so? Sometimes they struggle with that and they say we want to give to charities, except we don't compete with charities. They do the big bulk. So if there's any big bulk, we say no, go to charities. We deal with the stuff that will be thrown away. Because if you give 5 bags of food to a charity, they would think, what am I going to do with that? So we fit in between. So it's just getting people to understand and educating these businesses that we are not competing and we can make them zero food waste, which is really, really important today.
And in terms of your volunteers, who's volunteering? What kind of people are volunteering?
Yeah, so it's all sorts of people. So how we get volunteers, if there is a slot near you, we'll advertise on the app at the top and say, like, there's a slot near you. Come, claim the slot. And you need to be trained as well. So it's all sorts of people. Anyone who wants to do it, but you get anyone across the board. Really.
So training, what does that entail?
We work with the local councils and come up with like food safety regulations as well. So if you're just a regular user like us, you just use your common sense. But when you pick up from shops, they have to go through training about like how to handle food, how to treat it, and how to distribute it versus like the best before dates, used by dates. But it's all sorts of people. The one thing that's interesting about OLIO though is 80% of our users are female.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And there was an article recently.
Let's unpick that.
I know. Well, there was an article recently that's saying women by nature like to take care. And that's what we've done throughout history. So it's women are the ones who are trying to make a change.
80%, does that surprise you? I'm surprised it's that stark. Is that surprising anyone?
No.
Next. Have you got any questions? I mean, I think this is fascinating. I've got lots of questions. Any questions for, yes, Raphael?
So first of all, I'm a huge fan of OLIO. I've been using it for months, so it's
That's amazing.
a great pleasure to hear you talk about it. Oh, sorry.
Oh, we've got a mic. Sorry, we've got a mic.
And I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the volunteering program, not just about the picking up from the stores, because I imagine there's more logistics to that, but the part where there are volunteers that help get more users, and has that been working well? Do you have any sort of metrics on that, like how effective it is?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We don't have any specific metrics on that, but we know roughly it's like 60% of our users are organic. So we know it has something to do with it, but we don't track it. You know, we thought about like putting QR codes on it, but like our users are not really into that. But we think it has an effect, especially when you give these packages to 50,000 users. You do see constant growth.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. And are there demographics as to who's using it the most? In terms of
Mainly,
age?
mainly females, like
Females are a bit-
20 to 36 is our highest group.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really,
Women
I
will
just find
save
this-
the world.
I find it fascinating. I think that's really interesting.
And another thing is, so it's like when you start a business and you see who's using it, sometimes you can like advertise to those people.
Yeah,
And then,
so- yeah.
And then at the very beginning, because as a startup, you're a jack of all trades at the beginning, you do a million different roles. So at the beginning, I was like, let's do different tests, because maybe we are just pushing to this demographic. This is an
Yeah,
organic
yeah.
demographic. And then we did blind tests, and it's always that demographic, no matter what you do.
I think that's so interesting.
I know.
It is, isn't it? There's a whole psychological paper in that, isn't there?
I know.
Any more questions for Viv? Yeah, there's two at the back. Oh, they're being so polite. We'll go, whoever grabs the mic first.
Well, thanks for that. That was lovely, inspiring app, the design of it. And I was just mainly going to ask, would it be hugely beneficial for here in the UK, where we have a lot of food banks and places like that, where it would be more, some people in poverty that go to food banks find it hard to go to there due to financial difficulties? Would this help solve problems like that and being able to deliver it on a friendly neighborhood?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So as I said before, there are 8 million people who are struggling to find food every day, and that's just in the UK, and only 1 million use food banks. It's not easy to get in the food banks, right? You have to like be accredited to be allowed to go to food banks. And not only that, some people like they might lose their job for 2 weeks. They don't need a food bank, but they struggle for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
And there's a stigma. There's still a stigma.
there's a huge
There's
stigma.
still a stigma.
So the thing is about OLIO, one of our values is we're inclusive. So we make sure to say we are just primarily to stop food waste. We're not a haves, gives to have-nots. However, we are very aware that we help a lot of people in those situations. So we do surveys, and 30, like people who do answer them, it can be 30 to 40% of people who do request food need that food. And a lot of people say, as you said, it's great, there is no stigma.
Yeah.
So I would give food away to this like lovely lady who lived near me. She was so nice. She would come with her kid. We'd always chat. And then I guess after a few months, she felt really comfortable saying like, you have no idea what this does to me. Like,
Yeah.
she said, this changes my life. And I was like, oh, I couldn't believe it. Because you wouldn't know if you just walked by her on the street at all.
But this will happen more and more. I mean, we talk to the food bank operators very, very regularly, weekly basis, and it's just going through the roof.
I know.
Absolutely through the roof.
And
because of
that's
the cost of living stuff.
It's really scary. So that's the one thing. So we have two things about OLIO. A number one thing is any marketplace you do is uneven. Either more people add, more people request. So we have no problems with requesters. So in product, you know, we can make the requesting experience better. Like, oh, it'd be better if like the requester did this. But we're like, it doesn't matter. It's fine. We want more adders. So we do everything we do is to get more people to add. And then we also have this thing, as I said before, we call it like the middle class syndrome. That's what we've just called it internally. So you tend to surround yourself with people like you. And you say, oh, it's 2 tins of soup. I don't value this. None of my friends or people I surround myself with will value this too. I'm not going to upload it to OLIO. You have no idea who's out there. You will put it on. People have traveled. I had like 2 containers of squash. A lady traveled like 10 kilometers just to pick up 2 things of squash. And I felt like so guilty. I was like packing everything I could in. You don't know the value it is on other people. So we're trying to break down that stigma because we need more people to add, and people do have food to add. It's just like getting over our insecurities about it. And it does sometimes, we know it does feel weird sometimes to give it away, but then when you do, it feels great.
Yeah. Another question at the back, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned moving away from that sort of linear cycle into a more circular economy. I know the example you used was a drill that gets used and then put away or thrown out. But that does benefit the consumer and the planet. As a manufacturer of drills, for example, do you do you get resistance, or is there a way you're planning on approaching that? Because obviously, the manufacturing world, when people don't start buying more things, they're going to suddenly have potential issues, right?
Well, we do live in a consumer society. And that's what's really difficult as a whole. And I mean, we haven't got pushback yet, but we will need to change, like, as a society as well. I think now the right to repair in Europe is becoming a thing. And they're making a law about that. So instead of throwing things out, you can repair it. So yeah, there'll probably be like huge backlash, but we haven't seen anything yet.
It's interesting. There's been schemes, certainly I know in Edinburgh and Glasgow, like neighbourhood schemes or slightly bigger neighbourhood schemes that do have a community that they do tool sharing, like you're speaking about. Also musical instruments that they were speaking about. So there is this kind of established that have kind of gone, that are very, very established, but have gone kind of under the radar. But it seems to work very, very well.
And there are, I forget the name of it, but there are some like shops in London that are starting where you can like go and borrow like a drill, for example.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to go to your neighbor, you can like, it's like it's called Library of Things. So it's a library of things instead of books, and you can go and borrow loads of different things.
Well.
Oh, is one? Yeah, so things are starting to change.
Adam.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Like in France, they started to legislate that you can't just throw away food. That's good. What role do you see legislation and law playing? And also, like, what law would you like to implement to help?
Yes, that's a good question. So we're seeing change all over the place. In the UK, there's something called the Corton Agreement. So and their goal, and it's run by the government, is to cut food waste by 50%. But companies have to voluntarily sign up to this. I would love to see it if they were forced to do it. But one good thing now is there's a lot of social pressure to be good. So as you said, how long does it take to get these clients? 7 years ago, there was no social pressure. Like we didn't really care.
Very different.
No, and 50% of people would prefer to shop at sustainable businesses or businesses that do good. So not only is there a push from the government by the Corton Agreement, there's push from users as well.
So both sides, isn't it now?
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think I would like more change from top down. I think there's a lot of things that are brewing from us. But I think, and maybe it's due to capitalism, as you said before, it's been a pushback from the top down. But I think that will change. It will need to change.
Interesting question. Yeah. Maybe, two more.
Yeah, my question was actually fairly related. So we touched upon like different types of regulations in different countries. I was wondering, with such a highly local service, do you do anything in your service to adapt the app, the service to different markets? Like, is it different in, I don't know, France than the UK and Germany and I don't know what, or is it the same everywhere?
So that is a very good question, because we are going to go through like proper international expansion. We are a very small company. We've been like hustlers for years. We've now raised a bit of cash, so we are growing. Currently, so we can grow our product faster, we only keep it the same. We don't tier it to different markets, but we will do it this year. We have a really big market in Singapore. It's just the way they're grown up. Their mentality is to share. And we didn't do anything with Singapore. There's just like people found us and loved it.
Just grew organically.
Exactly. Wow. And same in Mexico as well. But Mexico, they use the app completely differently, which is really interesting because it's the exact same app. And they like.
In what way?
Like we have a forum and everyone just posts listings on the forum. Although we have like rules and pop-ups say like, don't post on the forum. This isn't how it works because it's not localized. And it's just like they struggle with it more because the way they use technology is different. But we're going to be doing that, but that takes a lot of dev resource to tier it to different markets. But we definitely will have to. But the one thing we do is language. You have to change the way you say things. You can't just do a straight cut and copy or cut and translate, because even simple words means very different things.
It's really interesting. Maybe time for one more. Yes, right in the middle there.
It's a bit of a weird one, but OLIO is specifically app-based. Is there any kind of movement into more of a desktop website space? Or I imagine most of the audience, because you need to take photos and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that is a good question. We actually have a desktop version of OLIO. It's not great, so we always say it's beta, but we're going to make it par with our app this year. And we always say that one of our number one value is inclusive. So we know not everybody has mobile apps, so we really need to bring it up to par. But that is a good question. But we started with a mobile app for the sake of taking pictures, really.
It's just fascinating, isn't it? I think the whole psychology behind it is fascinating, and the future for you is, I mean, it's going to grow and grow, isn't it?
I mean, it's mad, like behavioral psychology. I love it. It's so difficult, but like we still haven't figured it out. But I speak to everybody and figuring out what people do and how they do it. It's very
It is fascinating, isn't it? Well, I think that's a fascinating, brilliant place to end on, Viv, because that is pretty much end of day 2 and the end of conference. I have honestly found it. I love stories. I love storytelling. It's basically what I do in my job, and I love talking to people. And I have heard some fascinating stories over the last couple of days, and genuinely very inspiring. Some shocking in a good way, and I really do hope that you feel the same. A massive thank you to you for coming along to this event in person, which has just been too exciting, I think. We're a bit like kids in sweetie shops getting to see each other again. A big thank you to all our speakers. I know some of them have had to disappear back to their homes. Mark, Graham, Helly, Poppy, Julian, Elon, James, Johnny, Andy, Jeremy, Helena, Adi, Stuart, Rafaela, Adam, Anna, Damien, and of course, Viv. I just want to thank the sponsors as well of Design It, Build It 2022. Platinum partner, of course, Zalando, who we heard from earlier on. Simply wouldn't be possible without them. Gold partner, Komodo Design. Digital, I do apologise. Silver partner, Free Agent. They had the, obviously the stands right out the front. They'll still be there tonight, I think. Bronze partners, Beatnik Flow, Overflow, Smarta and Zinc. It is time to announce the winner of the Overflow prize. In fact, there's 5 winners. James Seabright, Emily Fraser, Arner Bogason, Caroline Smith and Callum Rocks. If you go and see Sophie at the registration desk at the front, you will get your prizes. Before you head off tonight, remember that the after party event is something rather special. It's at the Caves, which is probably, could you walk from here? Yes, you probably could. It's in part of Edinburgh, and the Edinburghers will know this, but it's part of Edinburgh. It's called the Vaults. It's pretty much built under the city chambers. It is a really fascinating and spectacular place. I did a programme there about 4 years ago. It's got an incredible history. It will not surprise you that it's meant to be haunted as well. They have done one of the paranormal programs there where they had them sleeping in overnight. I had a really strange experience there, which I'll tell you about maybe later if you're at the Caves. Don't let that put you off though, because it'll be very friendly. I'm sure it will. It'll be warm. There is a cold spot, but I'll see if you can spot it. So please do go along to that. And I know there'll be lots of conversations carrying on there. So I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I really do. Thank you very much for coming along. And thank you to that. It was a very inspiring chat. Thank you. Well done, guys.